And that's exactly what we do. We met up with Papyrus and hang out with Undyne. She's not very happy with this, but tries to become our friend to prove a point to Papyrus that she can become friends with anyone in a form of a competition. It seems to be going well, but eventually she believes it isn't working and tries to fight us. She tells us to hit her with everything we got, and that's exactly what we did.
We just do supper.
Yes,
MMA.
But we are weak as fuck. She sees that we don't really want to fight her, so we do eventually become her friend. But there's something else we have to do. We have to deliver a letter to Alphys from Undyne, and when we do, now we're apparently on a date. Yeah, this letter was a love letter, and Alphys thinks that the letter was from us. The date is very awkward, but Undyne eventually makes her arrival to trying to look for Alphys. However, Alphys hides from Undyne, not trying to get caught since Undyne would believe we're trying to date Alphys. So the truth is out that Alphys likes Undyne as well. But Alphys doesn't know that this is the case until Undyne catches us. She then pours her heart out to Undyne, and Undyne reciprocates in a form of an exercise with Papyrus. But they're together now, so now we just have to... Oh wait. Papyrus calls us saying that we should go to the lab since something was going on with Alphys. So we go check up on her, and we found a door that's usually closed, it's now open. So we go in, and this is where things get a whole lot creepy. There are these templates on the walls that tells us a story about what's going on with Alphys and her recent experiment that went horribly wrong. And weirdly enough, there are some entries that are not present in this lab and are actually not in the game. They are in a form of a secret you'd have to find in the files. So the templates tells us that after some monsters have fallen down, aka they're close to death, Alphys was given permission to experiment on the monsters, and what she used to experiment on them is interesting. She uses a material called determination, a substance that is used from previous human souls that has fallen into the underground and died. At first, it seemed to have gone well, and the monsters actually started to act normal and acted like nothing happened. But then in a few moments, their bodies started to deform and they began to melt. Alphys begins to panic and tries to save them by injecting them with more determination, but in the last entry that we can read, it goes terribly wrong. We get to see what happens to their bodies, starting with the most mysterious monster out of every amalgamates we've ever encountered, the memory heads. After interacting with a sink, a white substance comes out of the faucet and 3 memory heads form in front of us. After interacting with them by using our phone, they tell us to join them on the fun. After refusing the offer, we can spare them and they disappear, dropping a key, allowing us to advance through the lab. We need to find 3 more keys to enter through this door, and by doing so, it means we have to encounter more monsters. The second one that we found was in the bathroom, a weird looking one just wiggling around faster and faster the more we got close to it. And when we finally got to the current and opened it, there was nothing but a key. 2 more to go. We then see a huge and strange looking machine, but what's weirder is the fact that there's a save point that's blocking our path to the next room. But going to save was a bad idea as it was actually a monster. This one is named Lemon Bread. A monster that we found out later was actually a few different monsters that melted into each other and became one being. After sparing it, we were able to find out what was on the other side of the room, but it's just completely covered in fog. Continuing into this room is basically impossible, but something does block our way. A man hiding within the fog. We exited to see if we could see through the fog with an item of sorts, and that is when we saw a room full of fans and we had to turn it on. After turning on the fans, a bunch of dust starts to form into another monster called the Amalgamates. This room is just a bunch of dogs melted into a singular body, and the fight itself is creepy just like the rest. This time it's of a dog with a hole in its face. But after interacting with it the right way, it shows us that the Amalgamates are content and we are able to spare it. When we entered the room though, there wasn't any man that we interacted with before, but instead are a bunch of fridges. One of them is even shaking, but surprisingly that isn't a monster. Instead it's the one next to the shaking fridge that is a monster. However, this one can't even be considered as a fight. This one is just a sad encounter as this monster is of 2 monsters relatives from Snowdon in the hotel. It's supposed to be a snowdrake's mother and a husband to another snowdrake. Fighting it especially is basically nothing to scuff at, as she doesn't even try to hurt you, just says that it's too cold. We make the mother laugh and with some jokes and ended the fight. Doing so, she dropped another key. We need 1 more key, but before we went to go find one, we saw a room with a TV with a note next to it. It's of Alphys saying she found some tape that reveals the Dreamore family, but she believes she should keep these away from Asgore for his sake. Watching it gives us a few more information about the parents and of the children. The first one is actually of Toriel and Asgore, and this is way before Asriel was born. Nothing special happens here, as it's just Toriel making jokes and Asgore laughing along with her as they couldn't wait for the child to be born. The rest is of Asriel and of the first human hanging out with each other. One tape is of the human making a creepy face, but Asriel forgot to take off the camera cap, which is why all the tapes are completely black. The next one is of the same thing, but Asriel left the cap on the lens on purpose. However, things get a bit sinister as Asriel and the human are playing with each other. Asriel is asked about what happened to their father and how the golden flowers tea they made for him got him very sick. He then asks why it is that the human asked him of this. That is when we get to the last tape where it reveals it all. The human poisoned himself so that Asriel can take his soul to try to free the monsters. Now we get the bigger picture. The first human selflessly decided to poison himself, which is why we were told before that the child grew incredibly ill. Asriel didn't like the plan, but decided to go along with it for his sake. The tape then ends. We finally found the last room, and with it shows us a room with a bunch of golden flowers. We didn't get an interaction, but our chat bubble turns into a monster named Reaper Bird. It's probably the second creepiest monster I've seen in this game, as its body even goes through the chat box. After sparing it, we get the last key, and made it to the door. There are templates on the walls, but they don't work, so we continue forward. Doing so, we found a power switch to turn on the elevator to get out, but after turning it on, we get surrounded by the monsters.
That looks
That's
like
a unique game.
Pac-Man creature.
It does.
Hey, stop.
Out of nowhere, Alphys saves us in the nick of time. She explains that the monsters were following us because we had chips on our body. So, yes, we did buy some food from the vending machine that was down here. Look, I need to buy some health items. How was I supposed to know? She then explains that she was trying to hide away from all of her problems, but realizes that it wasn't right to hide the truth from everyone. So she decided that she wants to set the monsters free from her lab. She walks off and we try to follow her, but then the templates that didn't work earlier are now on, and weirdly enough, they're smiling. The first template explains how Alphys tries to surprise Asgore with these golden flowers that came from the surface, and were now in the throne room right after the queen left. That was when she got an idea. What if determination was given to a material that doesn't have a soul? That first template ends, but when we get to the second one, Alphys simply says that the flower disappeared. We enter the elevator and we get a phone call from a mysterious figure. This person knows our name and thanks us for what we've done, as they quoted. Everything has fallen into place. The elevator then shoots up in the true lab in a fast motion and sending us back into the kingdom. We then see vines covering up the elevator, and this is now where we are told that the pacifist route is completed. We just need to go to Asgore. We met up with him again and agreed to fight, but when the fight was about to start, a familiar attack pushes Asgore away. It's Toriel, and now she's back to save us from Asgore. The king was shocked to see Toriel make her return, but she doesn't want to hear any of it, even explaining that Asgore could have taken one soul and head into the surface to try to free them from the barrier. And she's basically expressing her anger towards him as she doesn't fuck with him. Then out of nowhere, Undyne came in to stop the fight, then Alphys came in, then lastly Papyrus and Sans. Toriel recognizes Sans' voice, and they both remember each other from the lame knock-knock jokes they made with each other. She even makes a funny joke towards Papyrus, which has this funny interaction.
Wait,
This must be your brother, Papyrus. Greetings, Papyrus. It is nice to finally meet you. Your brother has told me so much about you. Wowee! I can't believe Asgore's clone knows who I am. This is the best day of my life. Hey, Papyrus. What does a skeleton tile his roof with? Snow-proof roof tiles? No, silly. A skeleton tiles his roof with shingles. I changed my mind. This is the worst day of my life.
Then Alphys and Undyne almost kissed each other, but Toriel stops that before it could happen. They all come together and Toriel exclaims that although we made it this far to go back home, we have made so many friends throughout our adventure. She believes that we'd be happy down in the underground. That was when the question came about. How did they all know when to come into the throne room? Alphys says this and talks to Papyrus as he called everyone to be here, but Toriel, as no one knew where she was and Papyrus didn't even know of her existence. So how did he get everyone in his room?
How did you know how to call everybody? Let's just say, A tiny flower helped me. A tiny flower?
Oh.
The sprite looks so much better. That was a lot better, actually.
Flowey put Papyrus up to it and tries to kill us again. Although the monsters get trapped by Flowey's vines, our friends protect us from his attacks before we could die, telling us that they're rooting for us to beat this flower. All of a sudden, monsters from all over the underground chime in to protect us and are letting us know that they got our back. Flowey is overwhelmed by the amount of people, but we fell into his trap. He then makes an ultimate move and takes everyone's soul. A flashing light covers the screen to then a black screen, and a single character with their back facing us. After a few seconds of this monster, presumably Flowey, making some movements in his new body, he turns around. He then calls us to us, saying if we remember him, and that we are his best friends. But then this motherfucker...
Where are you? Asriel, nigga.
Buddy, we were in a fight of our life. Well, me, because I played throughout the entire game. But this is a fight that was a spectacle to see for my wife. Azrael was using everything against us to put us down, from Chaos Buster to Chaos Blades, and just chaos all around. I was going to lose to this goat. While this fight continues on, if you guys don't know what exactly is going on, yes, Azrael was Flowey the whole time. But this wasn't Azrael's doing, as at this point in time as a flower, he didn't have a soul. So because of it, he became a monster in a metaphorical sense. Not only did Alphys accidentally brought Azrael back to life as a flower, but Flowey was the one that called us on an elevator and blocked off the elevator doors, basically foreshadowing what was coming. And because everyone from the underground decided to team up on Flowey, except for Masterblook apparently, who had his window curtains closed when a giant light appeared, him taking everyone's soul allowed for him to regain his original form. But during this Terraria looking ass fight, I actually gained my first death. But during this fight, our character refused to die. Normally, if you were to die to a monster, your soul would crack and shatter. After this, you'd get a game over screen with Asgore telling you to stay determined. I'm going to get into that part later, as it's pretty important. Now, because our character is at the last fight of the game against a foe like Azrael, they refuse to go down. So eventually we get to the next stage of the fight, where we have to save our friends by helping them regain their memories one by one. Until eventually, there is only one person to save, Azrael Dreamer himself. After we offered him help, we get a glimpse into his backstory and how he saved the first child that had fell into the underground and how they became like brothers. Azrael refused to listen to what we had to say and becomes emotional and tries to kill us, but we basically go into God mode and took that shit like a champ. We continue to try to save him until eventually he deforms into his regular self. Then the final lore is dropped onto us. Azrael acknowledges that we aren't Alex. We are actually Frisk. Wait. Azzy, what are you talking about? I thought you guys named your character Alex. Well, here's what actually happened. Azrael stated that Alex has died long ago, and thought that the way we presented ourselves, especially with the clothing that's very similar to this Alex character, Azrael as a flower confused us for his brother. In the cutscene that we see in this very beginning of the game, the child that falls into the underground isn't Frisk, the character we play as. It's actually the first ever human to have fallen into the underground, aka the child that Azrael saved long ago. We put that name onto Frisk, believing that we are naming them after the first human. Now, what is the name of the first human? Well, that's for another video that'll be coming up soon, but I can at least explain who was this human like. After Azrael breaks the barriers using his powers, he decides to head all the way back into the ruins where we first started the game. He's watching over the golden flowers. The reason why as to why? At this point in time, it wasn't known yet, but he says that someone needs to watch over them, the same thing that Toriel says after you beat her and go back to spawn. He tells us that his brother, although he respected him, he wasn't the greatest person. He hated humanity and actively told this to Azrael. His reason for falling into the underground too is actually really sad. Although it isn't explicitly said, it's assumed that the human wanted to take their own life, because of their hatred towards their own kind. When Azrael and the human transform into this godlike being, like what the monsters said in the New Home section, the human was the one that wanted to destroy humanity as they had all the power in the world to do so. However, Azrael was the one to resist it. He stopped the human from attempting this genocide that the human wanted to start. So he forced his own body to go back home, and the rest was history. Azrael told us that he wished he had met Frisk, as he believed that he would have had someone better. After this though, he told us that he is going to turn back into the flower, because he doesn't have a soul. But he thanks us for what we have done. We make it back into the throne room and everyone is here. I know they're already here when we wake up after defeating Azrael, but I wanted to tell the story here. They now refer to us as Frisk, and they explain how they don't remember what happened after seeing Flowey, but that now that the barrier is broken, they can finally leave. So that's what we did. We left the underground, and my god, it's honestly a really beautiful scene. The sun in the distance showering us with its golden glow, and the monsters are mesmerized to finally see after all these years. One by one, everyone starts to go off to do their own things, and it was now left to just Frisk and Toriel. She believes that we might have relatives that we want to go back to, but that she definitely wouldn't mind if we decided to stay with Toriel and be like a family. So, the final choice was made, and we stayed with Toriel. The credit rolls. We see everyone living their best life. Sense and Papyrus are goofing off. Undyne and Alphys had their first kiss. Toriel finally became a teacher like she always wanted to be, with Asgore being a gardener for the school, and then finally, Frisk sleeping in bed and Toriel brings us a pie, and she seems really happy. As she closes the door, game turns to black, and although there are a bit more to this credit scene, I'm gonna conclude it from here. Undertale made a big impact in my life, especially during my middle school years. I remember watching Jacksepticeye play this game for the first time with my sister, and after the first video, I wanted to get the game right then and there. So instead of going to my mom to buy a $20 game on my PC, I pirated the game. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, not gonna lie, I did that shit. Look, no, I redeemed myself. I hope I did. Like a few years later, because when the game was coming on a console, I pre-ordered the game and bought it again on Steam this time for $1. Yeah, it was a giant sale during springtime, so I bought the game for me and my wife, so I actually spent $2. I hope Toby Fox isn't watching this video, because if he finds out I pirated his game, I might get sent to an annoying dog at my door. But anyways, this game was not only revolutionary for little me, but in the gaming sphere as we know it. The way Undertale was made was not only super clever, with all the secrets the game holds and the story the game is told to us, but as well as it's an RPG game that's completely different from any other RPG games that I know of today. This game was heavily inspired by Earthbound. Although it's a game I've never played before, I can see the similarities that Undertale gets it from when looking at videos and screenshots. The path of this route was masterfully made, and it has the right amount of secrecy and lore that you can understand and enjoy at a great pace. I especially love how when you're doing the pacifist route, the first thing you're doing isn't actually the pacifist route, it's actually a neutral route. Reason for this is because you can never get to that route without having to get Asgore killed. And then in a clever way, Flowey tells us we have to go back to the game and befriend Undyne so that we can get the ending that we want. And then he calls us by the name we gave to Frisk. This introduces us to timelines in a subtle way, as it doesn't outright say anything about the different outcomes you could have gone if the game didn't lead you towards the direction it was going. There are like hundreds of neutral routes in this game, and although I'm not going to get into it here, Toby Fox did such an excellent job with the way the pacifist route was handled, and he put in so much effort into a route that for the most part is relatively the same, besides the few ways you can make the game end. The pacifist route especially reveals so much horror and even dark themes that the neutral route actively hides away from you until you reach the very end of the route, in which Flowey becomes very powerful with 6 human souls. From monsters turning into these grotesque amalgamations, from children, although not stated outright, being murdered or trying to off themselves, to even witnessing a monster grieving over someone they lost all those years ago. Toby Fox told such a rich, beautiful, and even sad story that really makes you think about what it was that you played after beating it. The characters he made, along with Temmie, are also just made with so much care in mind and have so many funny quirks or cool details about them that oftentimes it feels like you know them personally. Unlike 3 certain people, but one of them I'm gonna leave out entirely into my next video. Let's get to the characters. First one being Toriel. Her name is a play on word of tutorial, and she does enough with teaching you about the general idea of doing the pacifist route by giving you lessons on the dummy. Now with an average game of an RPG, for like 99% of games, there aren't really a spare option or giving mercy to the enemy. It'd either be fighting them or running away. And if there were games that had a sparing system, it wasn't to an extent that Toby had made it, to my knowledge anyways. I do think that the way Toby introduces us to the system using Toriel is great and rather simple. You can even see how much of a soft personality she has with just the look of her house and the way her voice sounds when she's speaking to you. Her house is very bright with a soft color of yellow, and when you find her sitting down and reading a book, it gives a big comfort and relief. But then when you enter downstairs, it's such a big contrast. The dark purple walls and the lack of music makes it feel so suffocating, like something can happen any moment. This moment especially made my wife not trust her, as she believed that she was trying to keep us captive, so that we couldn't return home against our will. Fighting her is a big moment for the player, as it shows if you are ready to go through some tough battles, and instead of fighting them, you have to try to find a way to get through her. If you didn't pay attention and talk to one of the frogs about boss monsters, you would be so confused and keep talking to Toriel, trying to get that yellow glow in her name, only for nothing to happen. You might even have beaten Toriel by basically almost dying, as she doesn't want to kill Frisk. I believe the mechanic of not highlighting the names yellow to end the fight into the very end of a boss fight is great, as it would have made the fight too easy, as the fights in the passage routes are already easy until you get to certain parts like Asgore, Omega Flowey, and Azrael's fight. But after Toriel runs away, I love that you are walking in this long hallway, basically giving you time to really think about who it is she was talking about and how dangerous was this Asgore person that she was trying to save you from. You can even run away from the fight. This doesn't do anything except making you not progress through the game, but I like that you could do this in the fight. Now let's talk about Undyne. Undyne is a great character that not only has a banger boss theme, but as well as a unique fighting style. Although I believe this is at her weakest moment, she still has some moments in the boss fight where she trick you and get you hurt or even killed, like with the reverse yellow arrows. Her fight can be funny too, as running away from her to then her realizing you disappeared gives a good sense of humor and intensity to the fight. Even at a part where Papyrus calls you, she politely waits for the call to end, so that you can continue with the fight with no distraction. Something that happens another time with another boss monster. Although you don't get to see her again after the neutral route, getting to know her after reloading the save file is nice, and I believe is one of the funniest moments in the game. Mostly because of Papyrus and him straight up crashing out of her window. But her opening up to you that in some way you remind her of her teacher was really sweet to hear from someone who tried to murder you a few hours ago. Even getting to see her and Alphys' relationship, I thought it was really cute how Toby handled their relationship, even being able to see Undyne kiss her at the end with a comedic ending to it. Now speaking of Alphys, yes, I know there are a lot more to Undyne than with what I said, but I'm gonna save that for the next video. I need to talk about Alphys. Although I do think that she's kind of cringe with the whole spilling everything about her favorite anime and her constantly texting you at the beginning of her friendship with her, as well as her talking really fast and being impulsive, I don't mind her character. That's pretty much the point that Toby is trying to drive home. She is a character that's basically two sides of one coin. On one hand, she's being herself and expressing her more weird side to us and the people around her, even if it isn't intentional. She even opens up and would like to watch an anime with you when you're doing one of the puzzles. Although the timing is not appropriate, or after finding out what she was doing the whole time with game Mediton on you to save you on purpose, she overall didn't want for you to die or have your journey end so soon, even if it meant putting your life on the line to make her life seem more interesting. What she did was 100% wrong, as she wasn't being open with her intentions, but when you get to see the other side of the coin, it's terrifying what she was running away from. To be the sole cause of family members being away from their families because of your fuck-ups can basically make you become Alphys with all the anxieties and impulsive behaviors she has. I don't know how it is that she was able to keep this kind of secret away from everyone for so long, but the fact she was able to not reveal this pain is telling of how much pain she was holding. Reading the templates on the walls, you can tell she really tried her best to save the monsters with something that quite frankly, no one should have been messing with. To see the monsters she tried to save go from normal to disfigurations of themselves is truly horrifying, and you can tell by the designs of these creatures. Being able to finally tell the truth to the families though is great for her character, as she does become a bit more confident near the end of the game. Now I will say she's probably the worst part of the game. In the beginning though, Reason being is because we're basically seeing her at her worst, and although the adventures we went through because of her was fun and even funny, the constant texting she does get annoying on repeated playthroughs. But the biggest upside to her is when she reveals to you at the elevator the truth about going through the barrier. Because having to hear that you have to kill Asgore was shocking, as we were trying to be a good person. So to hear after leaving the ruins that he's a fuzzy pushover from Papyrus and that he's a sweet dude at the end of the day was something that no one wanted to do. Now speaking of Asgore, he's one of my favorite parts of the game. The first time you get to hear about him is from Toriel, and this man seemed like, well, a monster. She talks about how if I were to leave, Asgore would kill us. So it was safe to say that we don't want to see him. But then whenever you hear about Asgore from other people, people love him. They call him sweet, a nice guy, and a great king. So being able to see him for the first time is a real treat, as we don't know exactly who to trust with the information given to us. Is he actually a bad guy or not? And some may think that you don't really get to know the guy on a personal level compared to others, as you do get to know the others like Papyrus, Undyne, Toriel, and Alphys, which, yeah, is true to an extent. But the first and second interaction, you get to really know him and his true side. He is a nice guy, with him saying that he badly wants to have tea with you. He acknowledges that the day looks really nice to have a game of catch, and the way he speaks to you is oddly calming. However, him revealing the 6 souls and destroying your mercy button was what made this fight so awesome. The fact that he forces you to fight him and the music bumping in the background are so good. It's one of the most shocking parts in Undertale. I do believe that both Toriel and the people are telling the truth, at least in their own perspectives. What he's doing is of a good king. He wants to help the people and break the barriers since they've been trapped in the underground for an extremely long time. However, what he has done makes him a horrible person, due to the fact that he has killed 6 children when he didn't have to do it. Toriel stated herself that 1 human soul would have been enough for him to cross the barrier and try to convince the humans to set them free. His own son already did this with the first human soul, as he was able to cross the barrier with no issue. So although we don't get to interact with him as much as the others, his past and what he did to you before and during the fight says enough about him as a character. Next character I want to talk about is Mettaton. I think he's one of the funniest parts of the game. His demeanor and outgoing nature really makes his character shine and stand out compared to everyone in the game. The first time you get to interact with him and his questions really highlights his quirk, I believe, as he's someone that at first doesn't seem to be taking you seriously. What I mean is this man is giving you questions that in some instances are either trying to trick you or he straight up doesn't give you an easier time to answer the question he's giving you. It's only thanks to Alphys that you are able to answer any of these. But that's only because everything was planned from the start, as Mettaton has stated. Compared to everyone else though, sure, he has some cool details about him in the many iterations of the neutral route, but if you weren't planning on doing the different types of one route that specifically involves Mettaton, you don't really get to know him on a personal level when it comes to how he treats people around him, especially his co-workers. During the neutral to then the pacifist route, it's pretty bare bones as to who he is and what he wants to be. He wants to be a star, and to do so he wants to take your soul, only to then realize that without him, the underground would be bleak and boring. I do wish that the pacifist route highlighted more about this, but that's why the neutral route exists. Although I'm not doing it, looking it up on YouTube will tell you what I mean. Then there's Papyrus. Remember what I said about how we get to know other people on a personal level like Papyrus in the Asgore discussion? Well, when it comes to Papyrus, there's something about him that does make him a bit fishy to me. Like, sure, you know of his ambition to be the royal guardsman and his love for spaghetti, but besides that, what else do we know about this guy that isn't in his room? Like the fact that his car bed is actually a car, isn't that funny? For the most part, everything around him is kind of a mystery, and it does sometimes lead to me wondering if there's more to him than we're leading on. There are certain things to note that although he isn't recognized by anyone that isn't his friends, the different endings of the neutral realm does highlight that in some way he does have some impact to the world around him, even if the people don't know it. I remember seeing a video in which only Papyrus died in the neutral realm, and the people, although they were fine, they were stating that something fell off, like something really important just disappeared, but they couldn't put their fingers on it. And it really makes it sad when you think about it that he's only really missed when he's gone by the people that don't know him on a personal level. But when doing the pacifist route, I of course believe he's the funniest part of the game, hands down. The jokes and the attitude he shows around the player, his brother and the friends he has are top notch. Even his fight against you is just very comedic. His whole character is someone that you don't really take seriously. My favorite part has to be when he tries to help you, but at the same time, he also gets you in trouble accidentally when Undyne was hunting you down. And when Undyne is in the midst of chasing you, he calls you to see if you want to hang out with the very person that is trying to kill you, with Undyne in the back, waiting patiently for the call to end. You can say that she's ruthless, but you can't say that she isn't patient. I do believe that Papyrus has just enough screen time as a comedic relief character, especially when he's just calling you on different occasions. But man, sometimes I wish he interacted with Frisk just a bit longer. Now I would like to talk about Sans, as I do believe that he does have some stuff to talk about, like his shortcuts and how he does know about resets, especially with him highlighting in the dinner scene whether you have died or not. There are just so many things to talk about with the dude. Hell, you could even get in this super secret code word to get a key out of him by leaving the game 4 times when you see him in the judgment hall. That's crazy to me, and that's anyways. And then when you finally get into his room and find the keys at the back of his house, there's more to Sans than we actually know. To this day, he's still somewhat of a mystery, even in the spin-off that Tony Fox made called Deltarune. However, I believe that getting to talk about him in my next video would be the most appropriate. Let's talk about the final character, Azrael Dreamlord, or Flowey, whatever is preferred here really. Flowey is a very integral character to the game, as he of course represents the evil side of Undertale with the whole speech of kill or be killed. And when he gets pushed out of frame by Toriel, it's immediately recognized to me that with her representing the pacifist route, Toby was presenting the routes to us with two mascots of these routes being front and center about what they are, even if Toriel at this point of time wasn't known to us. For Flowey to have two fights, one of which being his real form, I think it really shows the difference between these two versions of Flowey. One of which being Omega Flowey, the more chaotic and disturbing fight, while with Azrael it's easier to read what's going on and with it being more colorful. Yes, I do know that his actual first form is called Photoshop Flowey, but I've always called him by Omega since it had made more sense to me. I really like Azrael's fight, and it's one of my favorites in the game. I also really like how in the beginning of the fight, it's completely black and Azrael just stands there. However, when the music starts bumping, the waves of colors sets in, and if you were in the middle of a fight, it ends right then and there. He's also at a very powerful form, as you can't actually do any damage to him since he's essentially a god. We even get to see certain references to fights we went against before, as Azrael has copied the main character's style, like his parents, for example, with the fire attack and the giant hands. When the fight is over and we're just talking to him, it's a really sweet scene. I'm not sure why there's an option to not hug Azrael, because I ain't gonna say no to that. He's even the first person to recognize that we aren't this other person that he's been trying to call out to, but that we are Frisk herself. Back to Flowey though, he's also one of the characters that does recognize the power of resets, as he's used to have that power until Frisk fell into the underground. Although Frisk isn't going to be talked about here, as it'd be better to talk about her in the next video, both Flowey and Frisk having the power of determination is very important. With Flowey using it so much that he became evil due to it, whereas with Frisk, it's recognized that Frisk is her own person and the player are the ones that truly has that power, since we are controlling Frisk like a god of sorts. Determination is a huge vocal point of the game, as every time we save at a checkpoint, our character is always filled with determination, even at a weird scenario. The only time that it isn't said is when Alphys reveals to us that we have to kill Asgore near the end of the neutral route. Without determination, the power to reset doesn't exist, which is why Frisk is able to do it, and Flowey sends Alphys put determination into the golden flower. I believe this is where I should leave off with the conversation of Flowey and Frisk, as the next video will be more in detail. I want to talk about the music and one specific level of the game. I love every music in Undertale. I honestly don't know which is considered the worst, as they're all so good. Like yeah, I like some songs more than others, but I wouldn't mind hearing them more than like 5 times. The music feels like it belongs in each level, in each fight, that includes boss fights. Although Buffett, a fan donated character, isn't a major boss, Spider Dance fucking slaps. Shit gets me out of my chair to dance. Spear Justice for Undyne is such a fitting theme for her, but her other version of the song is way better. Again, I'll talk about that in the next video. And his theme is honestly such a beautiful tune to listen to. I love all the songs on here. Don't get me started on Waterfall's theme. I could go on for hours about the music in this game, but there is one level with such an eerie music that I must talk about. Alphys' True Lab is so haunting to me. The music heightens that incredibly well. At first it's really quiet, no music is heard, but once you head deeper into the lab, that music hitting your ears can send shivers down your spine. It truly feels as if you just unravel something that shouldn't be seen and should have been kept a secret. Especially with the monsters that we see down there, their theme can give a kid nightmares. But the one monster that still gets to me to this day are the memory heads. I still don't know who they're supposed to be. You can get the general idea about the other monsters like the Amalgamates and the Reaper Bird with how they fuse together. But the memory heads are such a mystery to me. You can at least find out where they went after the barrier is broken, as they go back to their families after everything is done with. However, with the memory heads, they are nowhere to be seen. They are the only monsters to just completely disappear from the game, and when you spare them, they don't get grayed out like other monsters. They just fizzle away as if they cease to exist from this world. It freaks me out how Toby Fox thought of these monsters and how he just doesn't explain who or what they are. I know there's a weird dude that pops up in the Amalgamates fight, and yes, although he's so out of place, I'd rather talk about him when we get to Deltarune, as he seems to be more important there, but the memory heads always stuck out to me like a sore thumb. Overall, this route does a great job as a way to introduce the players into Undertale, and how great the characters are, and how great a route it is. It was the first game to introduce me into the genre of RPG, and I think it's one of the most special games in the indie gaming world. I haven't played a game quite like it before, especially with the theme all about forgiveness and friendship, with it also telling such an extraordinary story. I loved every second of it, and although every player should play the game however they want, I feel like you'll get most out of the game if you played to achieve the Pacifist route first, as you'd connect with the characters more. I'm glad that a lot of people can recognize how great of a game it was, and still is when you're going back to it, as it doesn't feel dated to this day. I feel like if anyone were to go back to it, new players or old, they'd have a great time, even if they played other RPG games that's similar to it, inspired by it, or is just like it. But that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you guys enjoyed today's video, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, as I'd greatly appreciate it. That's all I have for today. Stay safe and stay hydrated.